a kind of a pause. We've hit a pause in the people coming in. So I'll just say a few words of introduction. My name is Gary Soretsky. I'm the president of the Princeton Preservation Group. For those of you not familiar with PPG, as we call it for short, we've been meeting since 1983 with lectures that are open to the public on a wide range of topics related to the conservation and preservation of cultural artifacts. The group was founded by preservation librarian Susan Schwartzberg of Rutgers University. It began meeting around 1980 in her living room, in which she lived in Princeton, so that's where we get our name. The group has nothing to do with preservation of Princeton. It's just a geographic reference. And since COVID, we've been meeting on Zoom after meeting in person for many years at a number of different locations. To honor founder Susan Schwartzberg's memory as an educator, PPG hosts occasional lectures presented by students or recent graduates on topics related to our mission. And that's what we're doing tonight. It's a pleasure for me to introduce Maria Júlia Costa, who is working on her master's degree uh, at the university in Brazil. And despite the fact that she is still a student, she's had extensive experience in the field of photographic conservation, treating photographs that have been damaged through inherent vice, but also those damaged by fires. I'm going to invite the audience to put questions in the chat during the presentation. We'll also have a chance for you to unmute at the end and ask questions vocally. So I'm going to turn it over now to Maria Júlia.
Hey, Gary. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I would like also to thank PPG for having me. It's such an honor to be here presenting this topic that it's also part of my master's degree thesis. As Gary said, I'm a photograph conservator based in Rio, Brazil, and I am currently enrolled with the Masters in Patrimônio Cultural, Gestão e Preservação do Patrimônio Cultural das Ciências da Saúde at Fundação Oswaldo Cruz, Fiocruz, a huge foundation in Brazil for sciences and health. And I'm also a collections coordinator for Instituto Ziraldo and a publications coordinator for Apoio Online. And today I will be presenting the conservation and treatment of acetate negatives. I will be introducing you to briefly introducing you to the history of negatives, how they went from negatives on paper support to plastic support, its main characteristics. So you can have like a general idea of the importance of negatives for the history of photographs and why we want to preserve them. And I'm also going to talk about the cellulose acetate negatives, its fabrication, deterioration, and conservation, focusing on two stripping projects that I performed at Gawain Weaver Art Conservation during my one-year internship. So first things first, I'm going to start talking about the brief kind of version of the history of negatives throughout the photographs timeline. The first kind of concept of negatives introduced by William Henry Fox Talbot, that after Daguerre shared the daguerreotype to the world, he publishes his method of making photographs in 1841. He patented it as calotype. Here I brought a image from photographs of the past from Bertrand, which shows us the structure of the calotype. So we can see here that the support used is paper, and then we have silver in the paper fibers, like impregnated the paper fibers. And this is important because the negative process making is what it's going to define the photographs and the way photographers make photographs until the late 20th century. But as we can see, the paper is not like the best support for photographs. It doesn't have the transparency needed to have like high quality and high resolution images. So, and also it's important to say that the history of photography is known as photographers trying to better the methods, improving the materials so they can have better images and permanence. So this brings us to the advance to glass negatives. In 1851, Frederick Scott Archer suggests the use of the collodion, a plastic made of cellulose nitrate diluted in alcohol and ether, as a binder to kind of hold the silver particles to the glass. The process to make the collodion negative is you coat the glass plate with collodion, and then you bathe it into a negative, into a silver nitrate, and then you left there for 3 minutes, and then you take it off, and then you expose it into the camera, and then you develop and process. The collodion is the glass plate collodion is the main process that it's gonna be present in the second half of the 19th century, and it's going to bring us the main photographic process in the second half of the 19th century, which is collodion negatives to albumin prints. So we're gonna have the collodion as the negative and the albumin on paper for the prints. Other improvement that the collodion negatives is that the solution increases the time of exposure. So what we had like for 3 minutes to exposure, or I don't know, minutes of exposure, it would decrease like for seconds. So this is a big improvement on the technique. Here on this scheme, we can now see that the support is not paper anymore, but it's glass. And then we have the binder, which is in this case collodion, and then we have the silver. So the binder holds the silver into the plate. But the collodion process, as the name suggests, that would be wet plate collodion, has its limitations. For the photographer to develop the wet plate collodion, he needed to do it when it was still wet. So he would like coat with the collodion and then bathe it into silver nitrate and then expose, and then do everything. All the process needed to be done while the negative was still wet, which brings us into photographers having to create like these mobile kind of labs, or just shoot images in the studios, because he needed to do the developing right away. Because the collodion, when it's dry, it turns into impermeable, and it won't permit the processing and to penetrate the collodion. And to fix that, after 20 centuries, 20 years, in 1871, Richard Maddox proposed a mixture of all the ingredients to make a photosensitive stick solution. In this case, using the gelatin binder, and the potassium bromide and the silver nitrate. So he proposes us to mix everything together and then coat the plate. And just like that, he creates the gelatin silver emulsion. In 1878, Charles Bennett proposes that heating the emulsion for several hours will decrease the exposure time from seconds to fractions of seconds. So this makes the gelatin like, as is known, like instant photography. Also, the gelatin silver emulsion plates are known as dry plates because they can be prepared, dry, and stored for later use, what made the fabrication move from handmade to a manufactured process. This makes the process much easier. The photographer can take the plates with him, like several plates, and then go like on a trip or something, then exposure them, and then after days he can develop in the lab. This is a huge improvement for photographs, and these kind of turned into the main photographic process for prints and negatives throughout the rest of the 19th century and the whole 20th century. And the gelatin turned into this binder for making photographs. But still, there were some some problems that wasn't perfect for the glass plates. After the gelatin silver dry plate, the cellulose nitrate was introduced as a support for gelatin emulsion in photography. And it kind of solves the one problem that the glass plates had. They were heavy, they were fragile as it was glass, and they were not flexible. So they introduced this cellulose nitrate as a support for gelatin emulsion in photography, and it starts to be manufactured mainly for motion picture because of the malleability and that the motion picture cameras and projectors needed. But then, after some years, they discover that cellulose nitrate deteriorates and becomes flammable after a autocatalytic process of deterioration, what resulted in enormous fires and destroyed archives and collections around the world. The negative starts to get kind of sticky and tarnished, what blocks the image visualization and needs to be stored in freezers, so it stops the deterioration to evolve. What brings us to our main discussion today, the acetate negative. The introduction of the acetate negative in the world of photographs happens in 1925 by Kodak as a solution for the flammability of the cellulose nitrate. The acetate is named as safety film to ensure that it's not material that will start fires out of nothing in your collection, for example, and fulfills all of the expectations. The acetate is stable and in terms of combustion risk and so on. But in the few decades later, the acetate collection start to smell of something acidic. The negatives start to get sticky and turn blue, to wrinkle, to starts to appear channeling, and so on. What's happening is that the negative starts to develop vinegar syndrome. The vinegar syndrome is a deterioration of the cellulose acetate that in a humid and high temperature environment, it starts to happen the acetate hydrolysis, releasing acetic acid as a gas to the environment, starting to smell like vinegar. Because of the deterioration that happens, the plasticizer introduced on the acetates manufacture starts to be expelled from the support to the surface due to their chemical incompatibility. What leads us to the appearance of crystals between the layers. We can see here in this image, in these two images, the presence of a plasticizer, crystallized plasticizer. It's very common too for the negatives to show a blue color over time. This happens also because of the acetic acid released from the negative. The AH layer that I'm gonna talk a little bit more on the next slide is made of gelatin plus pigment, and it's responsible for preventing the negative to curl during the expansion and contraction of the emulsion, and also prevents the appearance of halos during the exposure. So in the light areas, the blue pigment prevents from these halos appearance. But when the photographer develops the negative, and the developer is a alkaline solution, the pigment disappears. And because of the presence of acetic acid, when the negative's deteriorating, the blue pigment just show up again. And I think these are the main deterioration characteristics for the acetate negatives. And now I'm gonna enter on stripping. But before that, I would like to introduce the two institutions that are the owners of the negatives that I'm gonna be talking today. The first one is the Margaret Herrick Library. That is one of the main facilities for research and preservation of motion pictures art form. The project aimed to strip over 70 acetate negatives from different formats, but mainly 8x10s. The Margaret Herrick Library is the Academy Library, and they are based in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, California. And I would like also to thank the Margaret Herrick Library for giving the permission to be talking about their project here today. And I'm gonna also talk about the Japanese American National Museum negatives. The mission of the Japanese American National Museums is to promote the understanding and appreciation of Americans' ethnic and cultural diversity by sharing the Japanese American experience. Their project aimed to strip over 700 negatives, acetate and nitrate, and from different formats, 4x5s, 5x7s, and 8x10s. And also thank you, the Japanese American National Museum. Okay, so for us to understand how the stripping works, we have to understand the structure of the negative. The negative has three main layers, as we discussed before. We have the plastic film, which in this case is the acetate. We have the emulsion layer, which is the gelatin and where the image is. And we have the AH layer that also works as an anti-curl layer. So we have like these three main layers. But we have the sublayer of cellulose nitrate that is what sticks the negative together. So it's kind of like a kind of glue that holds the negative together. And the cellulose nitrate is between the AH and the acetate and the emulsion. So it's in these two areas. Oh, before that, I would like to show you. Can you see my mouse here? Can you see the?
I do not see your mouse.
Okay, so in this picture in the left, we can see the three main layers. The blue is the anti-curl, anti-halation layer. We can see the image, which is the emulsion, and we can see like this, that reddish is also the anti-halation layer, and on the right of the reddish one, there's a acetate. I don't know if you can see it, but there is an acetate without the image. So what is the stripping? The stripping process is a step-by-step process that is published at the Doug Munson's article, the pellicular burlesque. Where he talks about the process of the stripping. But I brought here to you the step-by-step. At first, we place the negative into a stripping bath and let it set for 24 hours. After the emulsion strips off the acetate, we place the emulsion into a new stripping bath, but clean. So we can kind of wash off all the nitrate residue. After we transfer the emulsion to a 100% alcohol tray to be digitized. After the digitization needs to be done while the negative is still wet. And then after the digitization, we dry the negatives underweight into a blotter stack. It's important to say that we have to always digitize the negative before putting the negative into the stripping bath, because it's a procedure that works really well, but sometimes it doesn't work really well. So it's important for us to know that it's something serious that can go wrong, and like you and the client and everybody needs to know that the negative might not be okay after the stripping. So this is important to say. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, that's it. And then we house the emulsion. Okay, here I brought a video to illustrate what I'm talking. So we have like 3 trays. We have the first one with the this first solution. We have the second solution. They're the same, but this is the fresh one. And then we have the alcohol, the 100% alcohol. And then afterwards, I'll show you the digitization stand. We will then digitize in the camera, and then we just house it. Oops. Here I brought this video so you could see the acetate stripping off the emulsion. Yeah, I'm gonna play this video again so you can see it again. We do it in the film hood. This is really important. The solutions are not really good for you to smell, so it's important for you to do it under the film hood. Yeah, you can see the blotter stack there, the box, and then the digitization stand. Yeah. So it's important to talk about this, the documentation and tracking of the treatment. I had this Excel sheet just to track when I was putting the negative into the bath and the date of withdrawal of the bath. It's important because I was tracking what I did actually put in the bath, what did work, what it didn't. So I had like this really well documented, and it was like 700, almost 800 negatives. So so I didn't like lose the negatives and the process and everything. And now I'm gonna go to the results. Here is one negative from the Margaret Herrick Library collection. And I think the thing that I want you to like pay attention into this image, and that the images that I chose to show for you today is how the stripping can be good for this situation. We had the digitization with a really good camera, and we flipped it into positive, and still we didn't have the faces of these three men that are in the picture. No digitization in the world would show us the faces of these men, like get their faces again. So the stripping in this case was really good, because now we can like know who they are and identify them and so on. I think this is the main purpose of the stripping, is to it's not only static, but to get like new information on the negative, that it's really deteriorated and that we wouldn't have without the stripping. Here is another image from also the Margaret Herrick Library. And here I highlight the face of this other man. It's really cool also, these images right here. This is reflected light, and then this is under the light box, and then this is after the stripping, and this is the positive. Now I'll bring for you today the Tanaka Photo Studios from Japanese American National Museum. This is another negative that was really wrinkled and deteriorated. And in here, I show you the faces also of men that we had a little bit of trouble to have them, and then after the stripping. So this is important, like the information that we can get out of the deteriorated negatives. This one is really cool also. It's really impressive. You're gonna see this is also from the Japanese American National Museum, and this woman here, her face was totally, it was right in the wrinkle. So we didn't have her face before. Also this woman in here, and with the stripping we were able to have her both faces. This man over here, her face. So I just like to highlight the importance for getting new information from the negatives. And another really cool thing specifically about the Japanese American National Museum project is that when we looked at some negatives, they had some inscriptions. And we were like, oh my God, they have inscriptions and we have to strip them. And what about the descriptions? What are we gonna do? And so I have tested the stripping solution with the pigment, and the pigment didn't move. So what we did is we bathed it into the stripping solution, and then we stored the anti-halation layer, the AH layer. We stored it with the negative, and then we returned to the museum all the AH layers that had the inscriptions, and they are here. I don't know if you can see it, but they're right here. And I think that's it. This is a short time-lapse video of me digitizing a 8x10 negative. I was trying to put everything together and to so it would be digitized as it should. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And I would also like to say one more thing. If you need if you need like to do the stripping, and if you are looking for some place for it to do with your collections, please consider to give a call to Gawain Weaver. He is a really big reference in photograph conservation in the field, and he does that in his studio in California. So I think he's the guy for stripping and giving advices and everything. But yeah, thank you.
Maria, there are some questions in the chat, which I'd like to get to, but first I just want to ask, or maybe you know that the topics in photographic preservation with the Munson article from 1997, is that still available from AIC?
Yes.
Okay, great. So those of you who want to look into this further, that's topics in photographic preservation, 1997. We have some questions. I have a couple of them, but I'll let we'll start with the questions in the chat, and then I'll ask a question, and then if anybody else wants to unmute and ask a question, we'll go that way. The first one was, has there been any research in alternative solvent mixtures for these baths from the Munson articles?
Like an alternative to the ones that are published at Doug Munson's article. I don't know, actually. I haven't seen anything like rather than the stripping bath that is suggested by Doug's.
Okay, and is that bath something like acetone?
Yeah, it's 50-50 acetone and methanol.
Okay. Next one, very impressive work. Is there any interleaving of the pellicule in the blotter stack?
Yes, it's a Holitex. We
Holitex
use Holitex.
is
Yeah, Holitex.
is the interleaving.
Yeah. So the gelatin doesn't stick to the blotter.
Okay. Next one, after this process is finished, how is the emulsion layer housed?
Yes, so we will house them into a neutral pH paper folder. So we would do a folder and then put it into a polyester sleeve.
Okay, and when you also retain the anti-halation layer, that's filed with the emulsion.
Yeah, it was gonna have another folder.
Another folder, but together.
Yeah, it will be in separate folders, but in the same polyester sleeve.
Great. Okay. Next one, in the video, it looks as if the negatives are placed emulsion side down in the solvent bath. Is that correct? Also, were there any problems to avoid when placing several negatives in the bath at once?
Yeah, so we usually it depends on the size of the negative. If we're talking about 4x5s, I would put like 15. Depends of the size of the tray too, but I would put 15 in the bath. But if we are talking about 8x10s, I would put 5, for example. So it depends of the size of the negative. It's not I would suggest for not putting a lot of negatives because the stripping bath is going to be saturated with nitrate. So the best would be work with a small batch of negatives, like
And
10 to 15 for 4x5s and 5 for 8x10s and 10 for 5x7s, something like that.
And is there a preference, emulsion side down or emulsion side up in the solvent bath?
Yeah, the preference is emulsion side down because it doesn't because the emulsion is the layer that we want to prevent. So if something happens and the part of the top of the negative it's not like really into the bath, maybe it can wrinkle or create something that we don't want to. It's important to say that when we bathe it, we place a polyester sheet into the bath so it makes sure the negative is in the solution. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so, and the trays need to be covered also, so the acetone doesn't evaporate and everything sticks into the tray. But yeah, as the emulsion is the part that we wanna preserve, I at least I always did emulsion side down.
I'm going to interject a question here since I think it's relevant to what you were just talking about. After you remove the layer as shown in the video that you don't want to retain, how do you lift out the emulsion out of the
How do I lift? Oh, yeah. So after this 24 hours, they're practically released all the 3 layers. So I would start taking the AH layer off, and then I would take the acetate off, and then I would transfer the emulsion to the other tray. What you can do, what I did with the 8x10s at first, because it was like really big and so it didn't like torn or something, I would use a polyester sheet to lift it and then place it. Just have like a support so it didn't
Do you use the glass rod to lift it onto the polyester sheet?
sorry.
Do you use a glass rod to lift the emulsion onto the polyester sheet?
I don't know what that means.
Like a glass, just a stick made out of glass that you can use to lift the emulsion out of the bath.
Oh, it depends. The emulsion is much more rough than we imagine.
Hmm.
It's really it's strong. There are some emulsions that are more fragile, and then I would use something to lift the emulsion, but it's in general is much more rough and strong than we think. So I could just lift them and place into the other bath with no worries.
Great. Okay. I'll get back to the questions now in the chat. The next one
Right.
was, are you doing AD strip test before the treatment?
AD strip test.
I
Sorry, I
think
don't know what that means.
I think it maybe the person who's asking Marie could clarify, but I think it's a measure of acidity.
No, I didn't, because for the treatment, as far as we know, it doesn't matter if it's more or less acidic. As far as we know, I mean, I would like to keep studying and maybe someday figure if it does matter or not in terms of what releases and what not and what doesn't release, because this happens sometimes. The acetate releases and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it does in the corners and doesn't in the center. So
we'll come back to your success rate a little later, because that was one of my questions. But
okay.
let's make sure we try to answer everybody's questions in the chat.
Right.
Did you vary your process from the original Munson article, or did you make any changes or improvements?
Yes. We didn't use the Doug's article suggested us to use methyl ethyl ketone after all the acetone and methanol baths. We didn't use the MEK, just like for health and things like that. We only did the acetone and methanol baths.
Well, it sounds like it worked. So the next
Yeah,
one.
it did, because the MEK, I think the MEK is like for kind of wash off the some kind of nitrate residue. But I saw that giving like the acetone and methanol bath, fresh bath, I didn't have like much residue in the emulsion. So for like health, personal health and preservation of myself, we didn't use the methyl ethyl ketone. I think this is the only thing that we've changed.
Okay. Maria Julia, did you have any issues with frilling or emulsion loss along the edges on very deteriorated negatives?
Filling? Did you say filling?
Frilling, like just kind of little chips along the edges?
Yeah. No, I didn't have much trouble. I'm trying to understand what you didn't mean with what you did mean with it. I don't think I did understand.
I think they mean like some additional damage that would occur along the edges when the negative was very deteriorated during the
Yeah.
process of restoration.
No, we didn't have any restoration. We are talking about negatives that are severely deteriorated. So everything that we can do for the negative with the stripping, we do, but we don't restore the negative or something like that. What I do is try to line everything together so we have like a good image for the digitization. But we don't do fills or any kind of restoration. We just store them and we house them, and
Thank you.
that's it.
And the next question, I think Lee is asking whether there's a certain depth of the solvent fluid that is needed in the bath when you put in the negatives. Do they have to be a certain depth within the solution while they're soaking?
Oh, no. Actually, the negatives would remain like really next to the surface. So as I said, what we did is to place a mylar to make sure they are in the bath, but it doesn't need to be like in some kind of depth.
I'm skipping over the nice positive comments on your presentation to just get to the questions, but there are quite a few. The next one from Victoria, how are the pieces of the pellicule held together in the folder? I assume she means when it has fallen apart. If that's something that did happen where it ended up in more than one piece.
Yeah, it happened once or twice. What I did is I had a small folder for the pieces and then a large folder for a large area. So I would like just make like small folders for the rest of the pieces, but it's worth mentioning that we digitized it, everything in their place. These emulsion, theoretically, they won't be manipulated by people like often. If they need to do it, it's going to be a specialized professional that's going to do it. So for the pieces, this is what I would usually do, just like small folders and then put it into the same sleeve.
And presumably they could put them back together in the computer rather than physically in order.
Yeah, I
Yep.
did it physically.
Mhm.
I had the effort to put them together and have a good digitization image. But yes, you can do it digitally too.
Does the treatment work differently depending on how degraded the acetate negatives are? For example, if the negatives display the plasticizer migration you mentioned or embrittlement of the acetate.
No, no. The procedure is the same for a 100% good, well, negative to a really deteriorated negative. It doesn't change the procedure because the basics are the same. It's going to dilute the cellulose nitrate, the sublayer. So there is sublayer in the really good one or the really deteriorated one. So it doesn't matter. Usually we take a little bit of care when there are like some tears on the negative. So we would like take a good care of these ones and take a little bit of time on these ones. But if it's like there's no torn in it and it's okay, but it's wrinkled and everything, the procedure is the same.
Great, excellent answers. The next question actually is one of mine. Could you talk more about the photography process? What I was wondering is it wasn't quite clear to me whether you digitize the emulsion when it is still wet, and if so, how is it supported
Yeah.
during the digitization process? Also,
Okay.
you use an overhead camera with a light box or
Yeah.
using a scanner, or how is that done?
Yeah, I would use a camera with a light box. And what we do is we kind of made a kind of glass tray that would be a piece of glass, and then we would put some barriers so the alcohol was in it, and it was a thin, really thin quantity of alcohol in it. So we would put the negative into it. It was wet. There was like this kind of a little bit of alcohol in it just to keep the negative wet. And then I would place a mylar on top, and then I would expel the small bubbles with a pack pad from it, and then I would digitize it.
And then after
Is
you
it clear?
digitize it, then what's the physical handling of the emulsion after the digitization?
So I would have like use a lifter so to lift the emulsion, and then I would pick the emulsion with the mylar that I placed on top of it to digitize. I would get it, and then I would put it into the blotter stack with blotter, Holotex, emulsion, Holotex, blotter.
And
Is it clear?
yeah, it sounds good. And then just the last question would be when after it's dried in these blotters, does the emulsion stay in contact with the polyester and
Oh
become
no!
or
Oh no! I won't dry it out with the polyesters.
oh, okay.
Only with the Holotex.
Only with the Holotex. Okay.
Yeah. I would just like the mylar is to offer some structure for the emulsion that it's wet.
Okay,
So after I place into the Holotex, I will peel off the polyester, the mylar, and then I will place another Holotex and then the blotters.
okay. Just
Yeah,
mention in
so
passing that I have seen somebody do this where they the last step was they transferred the emulsion to a piece of polyester to create a new negative with a polyester support. So
yeah,
that's an alternative if that's something that you need to have, but
yeah.
it sounded like you needed it in your project.
Yeah, I have a colleague here in Brazil that does this transfers to a polyester sheet, but he's a person that works with photography and he enlarges images for a big institution here in Brazil. But he aimed to enlarge them. So he had a purpose of doing it.
Mhm.
The emulsion can survive without another support. So why will we just add a new support with new problems and new I
Yeah.
don't know, dirt or new materials to it if it's not necessary? In some cases it is, if you're going to enlarge, if you're going to use this negative as a negative. But if not, you can just digitize and store the image.
When I saw that done, it was actually before people were digitizing anything. So
Right.
that was
Yeah, what Doug does,
day.
yeah, what Doug does in the article is that he would make slides to it, but he didn't at that time he didn't transfer to a new support, for example.
Okay. Well, we've exhausted the questions in the chat. Does anybody want to unmute and ask a question verbally? Please go ahead and do that. Okay, then I'll ask another question that I had, and that is, what was your success rate? What percentage of the 800 or so that you worked on did you succeed in removing the emulsion successfully?
Well, it's a really good success rate, actually. I would say that we had maybe 50 that didn't release, 50 to 70 that didn't release. Some I was able to know, like, oh, this is a ENS code and this notch code is like this, so this probably won't release, so I won't put it in the bath, as it was like a lot of negatives. So in the end of the project, I was able to, like, oh, this one is not going to release, I'm not going to put it in the bath. But yeah, it was something like 50 negatives, something like that.
Do you think that's from a different formulation of the subbing layer for certain manufacturers?
Yeah, I still don't know.
Right.
I think the research that I'm working on and the research that I'm doing, nobody nobody talked about, like, what would be what would what are the difference that create a pattern of what releases and what not, what doesn't. So we still I don't know, maybe if somebody here knows something, but still didn't have, I still don't have this answer.
It would be,
I can maybe think on the thickness of the sublayer. Maybe the acetic acid deteriorates some of the sublayer and then sticks emulsion to acetate. These are some questions that,
hypotheses, yeah. No,
yeah, but
I think would be an interesting topic for somebody, maybe somebody else's master's degree project.
well, I hope it's gonna be my PhD one.
Okay, go for it. All right,
Yeah.
another question that came in. If the stripping does not work, what are the possible extra damages?
Rather than not release.
Yeah, something other than, so is trying to make it release and it
Well,
doesn't cause any damage to the negative.
well, I left in the bath some of them for like a month and it didn't release.
Mm.
Something that should release in 24 hours, maybe in a week.
Mhm.
So what I try to do is with a lifter, a metal kind of lifter, trying to release physically.
Mhm.
But what happened sometimes was to cause some torn into the
Right.
negative. Sometimes I was able to release and it was just a small torn, so it kind of worth it. But there are some of them that didn't release at all, at all. You would
Most of
just
them,
have a really big acetate in the middle of it. So
most of them would release in 24 hours, I think you
yeah.
said. Right.
Yeah, some of them would release as soon as I put it into the bath. It was like it looked
Well,
like magic.
well,
It's but it depends. Like the experience that I had with the Kodaks is that I had a good release rather than some agfas. So it depends. Like it depends of the I don't know if it depends of the manufacturer, the brand or the decade, because what we know is that there was always the the manufacturers trying to improve the acetate, so they would just like manipulate and create different different kind of acetates
mhm,
throughout the history of acetates, and it was like 50 something years. So
mhm.
um
Could
yeah.
also be the subbing layer
Yeah.
could have changed too, what they were using.
Yeah. Yeah.
That could be another problem.
But yeah, I have like I have this like a life project just to try to investigate and try to find a pattern for it. I'm sure that someone has tried before, but I'm just looking forward to have fun looking for the pattern.
Well, I think you're on the cutting edge here of this whole area. I know, it's been done obviously by some people, but you probably have more experience doing it than most. And I really appreciate you sharing your experience with us. And I want to wish you well in your future research and finishing up your degree. And maybe
Thank you.
we'll see you attending one of our future meetings.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I feel really happy about being here today with you all. I'm happy about getting to know PPG more, and I'm looking forward to uh, be here soon again.
Got some nice kudos in the chat. Uh, so I want you to know that there's a lot of positive response from the attendees.
Oh, I'm happy. Thank you everybody for watching and for
Thank you
having.
all who signed up, and we hope to see you at a future meeting. If you want to be on our mailing list, please join PPG. Our dues are $5 a year. Get on the mailing list, and you'll find out about members-only events, as well as all of our upcoming lectures. So I think that's about it.
Okay.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.